I've actually been on time like twice in my life. So yeah, no, I've seen in the chat that apparently it wouldn't be a Sura stream if I actually came on time, and I agree with you 110%. This would not be one of my streams if I was actually here on time. That all said, we do have something a little bit different today, something that we normally don't do. This is actually going to be a live debate, which I'm going to be doing another one of these on June 1st, but I'll give you guys more details on that later. That all said, we do have our two debaters here, but first let me introduce the topic. The topic of the debate today, as you can see in the title card, is did the resurrection really occur? Is it a historical event? The resurrection, of course, of Jesus Christ. We're not talking about any other potential deities here currently. So, did the resurrection really occur? This is a debate between Nathaniel Walters, who is a good friend of mine, and Epichrist, who is a long watcher of the channel. So, we'll first start with Nathaniel to introduce himself. This is not your opening statement. Don't do that. our format today is going to be short opening statements from both people, and then after their short opening statements, it's going to be a free-form discussion because I personally feel like those are maybe a little more productive. So, starting with Nathaniel, who are you? What do you do? And how is your day going, my friend?
Hey, Cirrus. 2 days, two days in a row, two streams in a row. Maybe there is a God. Um, I am doing well, my friend. Thank you so much for asking. I am Nathaniel Walters. You can find me at a couple of different places on Twitter. You can find me at Atheist Husker. You can also find me as the co-host of the YouTube channel and show Divine Disbelief. We come on every Wednesday and Sunday at 7:30 Central. And as I always say, you figure out your own time zone there. Where my partner Susan and I go over news that affects the skeptical community, as well as sometimes some of the things that we like to do on Sundays is bring on a special, like a co-host. And I think this week we're going to have the Unlikely Atheist on. I believe is going to be our guest and service at some point in the future. And then I do this on a fairly regular basis now. I have, of the three debates that I have lined up in the near future, which one of them is in October at Rogers State University, they all have to do with the resurrection of Jesus. So I think that I just debate the resurrection of Jesus more than anything else.
Fair enough. And then next we have Epichrist. So, same thing. Who are you? What do you do? And how is your day going?
I'm just a regular guy or regular Christian on internet. I'm just a student that studies computer science. That's it. I guess. My day it's been good. Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, with that said, then I guess that means that since we do have both of our interlocutors here, my job is going to be sitting back and moderating, which means I'm going to have to be very quiet. Not something I'm very good at, sorry about that. But I am going to sit back and let these two have at it after the opening statements is here. Your maximum time is 5 minutes for your opening statement, but if you end up doing it shorter, then that is cool as well. So, with that said, the affirmative position is Epichrist. They are having the affirmative position that the resurrection did in fact happen, which means that they have the floor. So, Epichrist, we start with you, and your time starts now.
Okay, so in today's debate, we will talk about if the resurrection happened, and I will use the typical argument for the resurrection, which is the minimal facts argument. I know it's boring argument. I know that, but I'm just I'm just giving you. I'm just gonna explain the argument just in case if you haven't heard it. So the first first evidence is Jesus died and that the apostles saw Jesus rose. The third is that they died for their belief. Fourth is that they found the empty tomb. Fifth is that the enemies of Jesus Christ converted. So in order, so the reason why the resurrection is the better explanation for the evidence we have is because the hypothesis is less ad hoc It has explanatory power and explanatory scope, and that's the reason why it is historical. Um, yeah, and I'm done.
Okay, well, you only used a minute and 13 seconds there, so I guess this means that it's time for Nathaniel's opening statement as well, and then we get into the conversation. So, starting with you, Nathaniel.
Um, I didn't actually expect you to use the minimal facts approach. So I'm just going to yield the rest of my opening statement to you to try and explain it again. Do your best because it's completely, it fails in every regard. So please you go again. Try again with your opening statement.
What do you mean? Like, why should I explain it again? Like, I don't understand.
Okay. Okay. Well, that was my opening statement then. Fine.
I guess for now we're in the cross discussion.
Yeah, that was okay. The minimal facts approach might be the worst thing ever created when it comes to quote unquote apologetics from Gary Habermas, like Mike Lacona, and then unfortunately been used by William Lane Craig and all of his little philosophizing pieces of garbage people like apologists that try to say it's apologetics anyways. Let's get that out of the way real quick. So give me like you're what are you using like the one that has 5 of the quote unquote minimal facts approach? And by the way, hashtag Kyle Curtis TM on this one. It's called the no facts approach because you're just making a bunch of claims over and over again. Facts are stubborn things, as John Adams would say, and all you're doing is just saying things. You're just saying that Jesus died. Well, for the sake of this, for this debate, sure, Yeshua ben Joseph was a person, and Yeshua ben Joseph died. Congratulations. Don't really care about any of that stuff. So that's not even like, but we can't even say that was a fact because and you can actually use the Habermas 75% of scholars or skeptical scholars thing and say that that's the case. But even then, we don't actually have access to the scholars or skeptical scholars that he ever spoke with. So we don't actually know if that's true. But are you using the 5? It's actually only 2. Are you using the 5 or the 12 steps? So we can go on the 12-step plan if you want to. But as we're going to see in things like Alcoholics Anonymous, it won't work here either.
Can I ask you a question, please?
You can ask me all the questions.
Okay, so could you define the word fact?
Got to define the word fact.
Yeah,
sure.
In history.
In history, yeah, sure. Well, as it like in a historical type of context, or how we're actually going to define like a fact as it comports with reality today. Historical context.
Historical like context, please.
Sure. It is a set a fact. Well, there is necessarily no such thing as a quote unquote historical fact, because much of history is lost to history. But we can make a historical fact, as much as we can get one, is that we take a look at all the available evidence that historians look at, and we look at it this way. We say, and this is an approach that comes from Bart Ehrman, okay, who I'm certain you respect and hold in high regard, where we say we have things that are written about a certain person or a certain set of events that happen. They have to happen contemporaneously or at about the same time, and that they have to be multiply attested, and that they have to be without any kind of bias. And so we look at those, and based on all of those, we create what's called a set of historical facts based on those. It's the same thing we do in science, realistically. The issue, though, is that apologetics is the opposite of using historical facts, and apologetics is the opposite of science. So,
okay. Okay. So, do you accept that Jesus died? I guess. Do you accept him dying?
Well, that was part of this. Okay, my personal opinion of whether or not that happened is irrelevant to this conversation. For the sake of this conversation and nothing else, I am allowing for the existence of Yeshua ben Joseph, that person lived, and that person died and was even crucified, and that Pontius Pilate even tossed him up there himself.
Okay. Okay. So, okay. Do you agree that the early Christians saw, they claim that they saw
It's
Jesus,
a
right?
good catch there. That's a really good catch. Um, well, see, that's the thing. There's only one person in the entire New Testament who actually said, "I had an experience with Jesus," and that's it. We have no other firsthand accounts that anybody ever actually, besides Paul, on the way in a desert in Damascus, to where they ever said, "I actually had an experience." All Paul says, and this specifically comes from 1 Corinthians chapter 15, is that others said, this is the Apostles' Creed, right? From 1 to 50 in 1 Corinthians 15. Others said that was the case. So, according to the scripture and nowhere else, others said they had an experience. Yes.
Um,
But that's not three different facts, by the way. I know
mm,
it's not. It's people saying they have. Look, I could look at Surus, okay, and Surus could say, "I saw a UFO." Nathaniel, I could look and say, "Hey, guess what? I saw a UFO as well." That's not two different facts. That's one fact. People said they saw something.
yeah, I know, but
So the fact that Habermas, Lacona try and make it as multiple facts is the same thing as trying to say that that Matthew and Luke are different sources than the book of Mark, when we know that's not the case.
yeah, I know, but I was trying to allude that First Peter actually
Well,
says,
First Peter is at best um, secondhand, but sure.
yeah, it actually says that he is an apostle. Like if you actually read the first word in First Peter, it actually says that he's an apostle. An apostle means that you're an eyewitness of
That's
the
not true.
resurrection.
That's not true.
Hmm?
Paul is the first apostle.
Hmm? What?
Yeah, Paul was known as the first apostle, and he
He,
absolutely did not see the resurrection or anything about the life of Jesus.
no, no, what? Peter is an apostle?
Yes, but you don't have to have been around Jesus to have been an apostle.
No, 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 no.
In fact, there's even the part in the Bible where it talks about multiple apostles, like 50 of them.
Yeah, what I was trying to say is that apostle means that you have experienced the risen Christ. That's what it means.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. But okay. So I have another question. So you
Well, before you get to your next question, scholarly consensus says that Peter wrote neither first nor second Peter.
um
Peter or Kephas was illiterate. And that we see that in Acts chapter 1 and Acts chapter 2, that Peter or Kephas was incapable of writing.
actually there are evidence that the author of First Peter knew Hebrew. You can actually, when you analyze the text, you can actually see that the structures of the words is very similar to Hebrew.
Well, that's
Uh,
great and everything, but Peter didn't write them.
he could have because he was a fisherman.
Well,
Um,
wait, what do fishermen and writing have in common? That is, hi Kyle and Steve again. That's a non sequitur.
what? Those who were fishermen in the first century were merchants in when it was winter, and then they became fishermen when the spring came. They had to actually know how to write, especially if they spoke with the Greek, or because they sold things to people around the area. I mean,
Well, but yeah, but the book of Acts specifically says that Kephas was illiterate.
could you please read that text in context?
There, I mean, I'm first off, no matter what I say about the Bible, you're going to tell me I'm taking it out of context regardless because it doesn't align with your particular what you want it to say. But the book of Acts in both chapter 1 and chapter 2 specifically says that Kephas was illiterate.
Okay, but he could, someone could have written for him,
Yeah, which
a
is
scribe.
It's possible that somebody wrote
Yeah.
for Peter, but Peter did not write those books.
I mean,
Okay.
if a
You
scribe,
just said that it's possible somebody could have written for him, and then I said, yeah, and Peter didn't write them, and you said, I mean,
yeah, it's
you
possible.
went up to the cognitive dissonance wall, and you couldn't get through it.
No, it's possible that Peter could have written.
No, it's not. He was
written it.
illiterate. He did not write those scholarly consensus. Even theologians say that.
Okay, whatever. Okay, so I have another question. So do you believe that Paul saw Jesus Christ or not? Like, do you think he saw him as a spiritual being, whatever? Like, what's your opinion on that?
Would I have to ask you, and sirs, I don't want to be out of line with this. I'm sorry, but Epichrist, it seems like you're eating your mic a lot, and it makes it kind of difficult to understand.
There is a little bit of popping. If you can just like half an inch away, so that you're without a screen, your mic will pop whenever you're. It's just a thing that your mouth does. The screen protects from that, but if you don't have the screen, the only way you can manage that is by moving the mic like slightly to the right.
Okay, so what I was asking you, Nathaniel, I mean, what's your opinion of what Paul saw?
Sure. Well, I don't believe that Paul actually saw anything. I don't believe that Jesus resurrected from the dead. Paul, though, and we can go into an incredible amount of detail on this, though. The Paul and what actually came from in the book of Mark, which was the first of those written, and certainly was gathered from Paul, is that he had an experience. Even the Greek word that we see with optis has to do with experience or seeing something. It does not mean anything is bodily. From everything that we can get, from everything that Paul ever wrote, and I'm happy to go down this road with you and show and present the reasons that we think of this, like even in the book of Galatians chapter 1, where he specifically says that it has to do with a spiritual body, that Paul never actually said or believed that he saw anything physical, which does, of course, contradict the last two synoptic gospels and the book of John. But I think that you and I could agree that the book of John is the one that, if of all of them, that should be taking, that while it is my favorite of them because it is like super Jesus, that it is the one that should be taken with the least amount of critical analysis.
But don't you know that the word for the resurrection,
Antipistis, yes, I know what it is.
Is actually bodily resurrection?
Well, actually, it just means stand up. That's all it means.
What? No.
It's specifically what
resurrection. And you're right, it actually do a word study on it. So I mean,
yeah, I'm looking at it right now. Hold on. It specifically means to stand up. Let me see. Sorry.
If you could offer a spelling for that word real quick.
Yeah, absolutely. Epic, do you happen to, while I'm looking at that, because I'm happy to. Do you happen to know the Greek word for that? There it is. Well, antistasis. Yep, there it is. It means standing up. By the way, it's not. Yeah, okay, I said it wrong. Yeah, it is. It isn't anastasis. Translated resurrection. It's 42 times in the New Testament, and it always means to stand up. It's verb, a standing up. It doesn't actually mean to come back from the dead. It just means to stand back up. We see that whenever. We also see the Hebrew version of that whenever Elijah and Elisha, quote unquote, resurrect somebody in the Old Testament, and also we see it later on in the New Testament as well. And it always means the same thing. It never means come back from the dead.
Well, and you're right, did a word study on it, but he looked at the context regarding the resurrection, and he concluded that it is a bodily resurrection. I mean.
Okay, yeah, well, Paul never actually said that he accepted the bodily resurrection. Where did Paul ever say he saw Jesus bodily?
He never said it. Well, he kind of said it when he used the word anastasis.
Yeah, which means to stand up. But what I'm looking for is where. Let's look at this actually to take a look because I'm a fan of taking looks. Galatians chapter 1, verses 11 to 12. He says that he did not receive his message through men, but rather as a revelation. And he uses the same word or the same verb receives, which is paradidemi, in 1 Corinthians 15, 3-4, as he does in Galatians 1, 11-12, as John the Revelator does in the book of Revelation.
If you actually read a commentary, they actually say it's about theology. Like
Oh,
he
so
doesn't
he
want.
accidentally used the wrong word more than once.
No, if you actually read the commentary, they will say that he means that he got a doctrine from Jesus Christ. Like he didn't get a doctrine from man, right? He didn't get
Correct. He received it through revelation, which is what Galatians 1, 11-12 specifically says. And it says that as well in 1 Corinthians 15, 3-4. The same word for receives. I can
yeah
spell that. I could spell that one for you too, sirs, if you want it.
yeah he got teachings from Jesus Christ, not from man. Yes, of course.
Yeah, revelation, which is the same word that is used by John the Revelator in the book of Revelation. It is a revelation. John the Revelator hallucinated, okay, and saw things. They were not physical.
Yeah, once again, the revelation just means knowledge. Like he got knowledge from Jesus Christ. That's it. Where does it state that the revelation is spiritual? Like,
It's the word received. It's the
yeah,
word received.
yeah, he
He
received it from
received.
Jesus Christ.
It's the same verb as far as revelation as is used in the book of Revelation. He uses it twice. He uses it in Galatians and First Corinthians.
Yeah,
Nowhere he sees in Second Corinthians 3:17-18, he saw him as a life-giving spirit,
yeah, okay.
not as a bodily person.
Yeah, okay. It doesn't talk about his experience when he first met him.
Oh, it definitely does. If you go to the book of Acts, especially, it certainly says that he
That
didn't see anything, that he was
that
blinded.
yeah, that means it's a physical event. I mean, if he
Wait,
got
how if you're blind can you tell if something is physical or not?
first of all, his companions.
His companions didn't see anything. In fact,
Yes,
in both of them, they said they never saw, but in one of them they said they heard something. Which, by the way, that's contradictory.
they experienced something. They experienced something when it occurred. So I mean, it wasn't like Paul didn't hallucinate, or that is what Luke's trying to say, at least. So I mean,
Well, let's go ahead and say that the writer of the book of Acts. We don't know if it was Luke. There certainly is anonymous.
but once again, I mean, anastasis means bodily resurrection. I mean, if
No, it simply means to stand up.
yes, but if you look at the context of resurrection, it is bodily resurrection. I mean, if you actually continue to read Corinthians 15,
You think
what?
that I didn't continue to read the
What?
fucking books?
Let me speak. If you actually continue to read the Corinthians 15, you will
Sorry.
realize that Paul is arguing that if Jesus Christ didn't resurrect, then that means that a Christian's body will not resurrect as well. What he is referring to is I don't know which chapter it is, but I believe it's Daniel 11, where Daniel is talking about God raising people from the dead. It's that if you actually like ask a scholar or whatever in Hebrew or whatever, they will actually say that the Jewish context regarding the rapture is actually bodily. It's not spiritually. Like
Oh, I don't care. That part I don't care about because we're
yeah,
only talking about
you
Paul.
should care because Paul said if Jesus didn't resurrect, then that means we wouldn't get new bodies. So it's
Yeah,
oh
new bodies,
yeah, exactly,
new,
exactly. He talked.
not physical. What does he say later on? Can a physical body enter the kingdom of heaven?
physical body enters.
No, 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 no. I asked you a very specific question. Does Paul say that physical bodies can enter the kingdom of heaven?
Physical bodies. I mean, what do
No.
you?
What did he say? It's written in your stupid text.
Yeah, but I don't remember. So could you give
Oh
me
well.
that?
Here's a hint. Paul said no. Okay, so I'm gonna ask you again. Did Paul say that physical bodies can enter the kingdom of heaven?
You have to give me the verse first.
Um, First Corinthians. Hold on. I have to go back and look at that. I just have pages and paragraphs of notes on this. Sorry, apologies for those. I have to look back to my notes. I don't have this one memorized, but Paul.
We do have super chats coming in, but I am going to wait to use those for questions later.
I was, sorry, yeah, I was correct, by the way. It is 1 Corinthians 15:50. I declare to you, brothers and sisters, that flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God, nor is the perishable inherit the imperishable. So I was right. I just wanted to make sure that I was. Sorry, Spirit.
Yeah, as Michael Connon noticed, flesh and blood is just figure of speech.
No, it's not. He said it very specifically. Flesh and blood are not, these bodies cannot enter the kingdom of heaven.
No, it's actually figure of speech. It doesn't mean literally flesh and blood. It's just figuratively, just as like many Christians use such language. It doesn't mean like flesh and blood can't enter to the new kingdom. I mean, it doesn't make any sense because Paul literally says in Corinthians 15 that we will get a new body in the kingdom of heaven. So I mean,
I need to move on from this. I need to go on.
I mean, it's not.
No, you take certain things literally, and you take certain things as though they are metaphorical, and you take certain things as though they're literary devices, and it's difficult for me to go through all the stupid cherry picking.
I'm not sure.
And yes, you are. You're telling me I'm taking things out of context, and then you're telling me that when he says that flesh and blood can't enter the kingdom of heaven, he doesn't actually mean flesh and blood can't enter the kingdom of heaven, even though he says it multiple times.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. Do you really think that Jesus said that we would eat his body and drink his blood?
Do I think Jesus said that? Yeah. I mean, it's in the Bible.
No. Do you really think that he literally meant that?
Yeah, this is different. Paul is specifically saying that a body cannot enter the kingdom of heaven.
But it must be figure of speech because Paul.
Oh, it's nice when you get to choose which ones are figures of speech, right?
No, I'm not. I'm just saying that Paul. You're literally saying that we would get a new body in in the kingdom of heaven.
Before we go to heaven.
Okay, do you know what heaven is?
As far as I can tell, it's not a real thing.
No. Do you know what heaven is in the sense of Christian theology?
Oh, actually, let me flip this a little bit. Let me flip this. That way, I'm starting to do some offensive questioning. All right, because I think I can actually have the. Yeah, hold on. I can actually have this conversation with you. Let me do this. First off, do you agree that the only person in the Bible that actually claimed they had any kind of revelation, first person account with a risen Jesus is Paul?
No.
Who else said I had a like first person?
Okay. Yeah, I guess so.
Okay. Well, at least I got a yes out of you on that one. Okay. I have a question. When you think of something like a soul inhabiting the body, okay, and then it leaves the body and ascends into celestial realms, wholly free from restrictions, contaminations, imperfections of this world. It has like a soul, if you will, and an afterlife. What do you think of that?
Could you could you rephrase your question, please?
Sure. When you think of when a person dies and
Yeah.
the soul inhabiting the body ascends into celestial realms, call it heaven if you want to, I don't care, and it's free of restrictions, contaminations, imperfections of this world. What do you think of that?
I believe in soul sleeping, so I don't believe I personally don't believe that whenever someone dies, I don't believe that that soul goes to heavenly place. I believe that that soul is sleeping until the judgment day.
Okay, so you don't subscribe to Greek dualism then?
Could you elaborate on that, please?
Yeah, Greek dualism, I just gave the definition of what Greek dualism is.
No, I don't think so. No.
I just gave it, like, specifically. Greek dualism is a soul inhabiting our body and ascending into the celestial realms, wholly free from the restrictions, contaminations, imperfections of the lower physical world below. Our view of the soul and afterlife is wholly dualistic.
No, I don't.
Yeah,
No,
you can say you don't. And
I
then,
say I don't entitle to that, so no.
yeah, I know you don't agree with it because you don't believe it, but that's
Yeah,
okay because it's called Greek dualism, which is
yeah.
actually what Paul saw. Paul, as a Pharisee, saw it as Greek dualism. He did not see it the way that you see it.
Okay, where's the
What?
evidence for that?
Yeah, sure. Everything Paul said, everything Paul ever said, is that the body. That Paul never speaks of Sheol, right? When the body returns to dust. Well, actually, he kind of does actually in a way, and you can actually see this in some of the things in Mark where Herod Antipas speaks about Jesus and thinking that he's actually the risen John the Baptist. So there is that type of a thing where Paul, that does come from Paul especially, where because the Hebrews, as you're well aware, had no and Celsus really gets into this quite a bit as well into the 3rd century, had uh, um, no mythos or any kind of idea about actual souls going anywhere except for to sleep in Sheol and where they can't come back because it's a one-way street. They certainly nobody in the Hebrew Bible, which is the Old Testament, said anything about people actually bodily returning. And this was not a Jewish thing. This is never anywhere else. And this is why Paul wouldn't have written this. Paul would have never said that Jesus came back bodily, because that was not anything that a Jewish Pharisee who understood Greek dualism would ever say.
Uh, what?
Do I
Why?
need to break it down again?
Yeah, could you please rephrase that? Why wouldn't Paul mention that?
Because Paul did not accept, as did no Pharisee, which Paul was a Pharisee,
Yeah.
accepted. Thank you. I'm glad we agree on something. I have people that tell me Paul wasn't a Pharisee.
He was Pharisee. Yeah.
Absolutely. He wasn't an Essene, and he sure as hell wasn't a Sadducee. Uh, no Pharisee accepted a bodily resurrection, period.
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
So if Paul was a Pharisee and no Pharisees accepted a bodily resurrection, why would you think that Paul would write about a bodily resurrection?
Because he is not a Pharisee, or he became a Christian. He became a Christian. What do you think? I mean,
Every
So
he
I
became a
would like to
Christian.
clarify. I would like to
What?
clarify one thing. So Pharisee and Sadducee were more cultural positions. The Essenes were literally just the people who were in and around Galilee. Most of the
yeah,
apostles, not that weren't Paul, were Essenes. I'm throwing that out there just as a clarification thing. So one could be a Christian and an Essene. One could be a Christian and a Pharisee.
yes, yeah, and you having fun, Cyrus? Okay, you got it. You're good.
Yeah,
um,
but I mean, I don't find. I mean, I don't understand your argument really.
Could Paul could not, and I'm gonna get off of it because because I have to get off of the fact that Paul, everything from the last two of the synoptic gospels and the book of John is anti-Pauline scripture. And this is why Paul went 3 years before he ever even spoke with Cephas or ever spoke with James, the supposed brother of Jesus.
Where's your evidence for that?
From when he went to Corinth and he wrote
No. Where's your evidence that the synoptic gospels are
anti-Pauline.
Yeah.
Because they speak about a bodily resurrection. Like,
Uh,
well, not all of them, only Matthew and Luke. Mark does not.
So because the synoptic gospels had bodily resurrection, therefore they are anti-Pauline, and
Yeah, they spoke of an anti-Pharisaical action, which would have been the bodily resurrection, whereas the Pharisees did not accept bodily resurrections because they accepted things from the Hebrew Bible. They were now Paul combined Greek dualism with the Hebrew Bible, and that's.
I would like to read your sources regarding that.
Sure, here's one of them right here. You want to read it? It's called Paul and Jesus by Tabor.
Yeah, I
You can read that one. Hold on. I got more. If you want to read some of them, here's another one by John Dominic Crossan. This one's called The Birth of Christianity. I realize you don't like Crossan very much. I don't care. I've got plenty. I've got Bart Ehrman books. I mean, if you want to read my sources, I can quote them all over the place.
Sure, yeah.
But because I'm not the apologist supreme, I don't just use quotes. I create my own thoughts from them.
Yeah, same here. But once again,
I haven't heard one yet.
Yeah, but once again, anastasis is bodily resurrection by definition.
No, by definition, it means to stand up. But
but in the context of resurrection, so I mean.
Yeah, in the context of resurrection, it means to stand up. Let's, if we can, get away from the Pauline, anti-Pauline things, because I'm going to use scripture and I'm going to use the Greek words, and I'm going to use the fact that Paul would combine Greek dualism with Hebrew, the Hebrew Bible, and he would say something Pharisaical, and you're not going to agree with any of that. Let's get away from that. Go back into your minimal, or as I say, and thank you so much again, Kyle Curtis TM, no facts approach to this.
Yeah, I would like to ask you a question regarding extraordinary evidence, right? So I would like to ask you a question. Don't you think it's extraordinary claim that you need to use extraordinary extraordinary thing,
I hate this thing.
criterion? Don't you think that is extraordinary claim that you have to use that criterion in?
Let's just use Occam's razor on this, okay? Instead of using the phrase extraordinary, let's use lines of probability and go off Occam's razor. Let's do that. Can we agree on doing that?
Yeah, but you said in your.
Yeah, I know, and I know I did. I made a mistake by saying that.
Okay. Good. Okay. So what's more?
I didn't make the mistake saying it. I made the mistake by using that phrasing. I should have used Occam's razor and limits of probability. So that's the mistake that I made.
Yeah, but
I'm still right.
How?
Because a person coming back from a person resurrecting or standing up, or in the idea of that happening, is still less probable than a person staying dead, no matter what we do.
How do you know that?
Hey, how many reported cases of people coming back from the dead do you have?
I don't know. I'm just asking you. How do you know?
That's how I know. There aren't any cases.
So are you telling me that human experience determines the probabilistic regarding the miracles?
Miracles? All I asked you for was an example of somebody coming back from the dead. That's how I know it's more probable. People stay dead.
Yeah, but the thing is, you can't really use that argument.
Oh, I can't use the argument that we should accept the thing that happens more probably than the supernatural. Are you serious?
The thing is,
Occam's razor is cutting you in half right now, buddy.
the Occam Racer is just saying that you need to have a simplified, uh, that your hypothesis needs to be simplified.
Yeah, it's very simplified. People stay dead. You're welcome.
The thing, if if the hypothesis is the best explanation, then it's the best explanation. I mean, you can't really apply Occam Racer regarding
Fine,
that it's
fine. Let's not even use Occam's razor then, okay? Let's use let's use just probability. People die. Do you agree?
yeah.
Okay. We don't have any confirmed cases of people coming back from the dead supernaturally. Do you agree?
Yeah, okay, but if
Okay, so hold on. Hold on. By that line of reasoning by itself, even little Doll Surus would say that we have to look at these and say which one is more probable, that somebody died and stayed dead or that somebody supernaturally rose from the grave. And since we don't have any examples of a person supernaturally rising from the dead, we have to accept that which is most probable.
so okay, so
Do you
um,
agree? What do you agree with that? Because you agreed with everything up to that point.
what I have an issue with is that Bart Ehrman and many other that use this argument just switches the word impossibility.
Well, I don't care what Bart
Wait,
Ehrman says. I care about my line of reasoning currently. You agreed with it
yeah,
up to that point.
yeah, but you're using the similar argument he uses, so I want
Well,
to respond to that.
well, I'm not using Bart Ehrman. Why don't you respond to Nathaniel?
No, no, I am
Okay,
responding.
don't respond to me with Bart Ehrman. Respond to me with you.
Yeah,
Respond to my line of reasoning with you. I don't give two shits about what Bart Ehrman thinks right now.
yeah, I'm responding to you. What I'm trying to
Okay.
say is that you are arguing very similar as David Hume. What you're doing is that you're switching out the word um, improbability, no, impossibility with improbability. So one of David's contemporaries asked David Hume, imagine you have an Indian, Native American, and he never seen ice in his entire life. He's never seen that. Okay, and one day he saw water turn to ice. Did that did that does that break the law of nature or does it not?
What? No, I asked you about probability.
Yeah,
Again, I asked you. You went and spoke about David Hume. I don't care. I asked you about probability.
yeah, but what I'm trying to say
Is
is
it
that
more, oh, even in that case, when we look at that, even if we don't understand why something happened, should we say that it rains sometimes, that that this probably happens sometimes, right? Or should we automatically say supernatural bullshit? Like, which one of those do you think is should we do as logical humans?
if the evidence shows that it happened, then it happened.
Yeah, but how can we show that something is supernatural? And by the way, evidence does not show that anybody has ever risen from the freaking grave.
I mean, if you're telling me that we we have to dismiss a case because it never happened in our entire life, then we would have to
Not
dismiss.
our entire lives. Show me one example in the history of the planet of any animal, period, rising from the dead, especially if you take the 3 days claim ever. I'll even grant you that guy in South Africa in February.
Okay, wait. Okay, could you give me an example of people riding an elephant through a mountain or an ice mountain?
I'm not gonna cuss because I don't want to get Cirrus demonetized. But what?
Yeah, I mean Hannibal. Have you heard about that story? Hannibal Hannibal was riding on an elephant through a mountain, and historians says that it is a historical fact. What I'm trying to say is that if you are telling me that if we have no other, evidence that it happened more than once, like you're telling me that because we've never seen anyone rose from the dead, therefore we would have to dismiss it because it's not probable. I mean,
Hold on one second,
if that's your
Cirrus.
argument,
Cirrus. I hate you so much right now.
if that is your argument, we would have to dismiss the case that Hannibal rode on an elephant through a mountain.
No. Did the elephant come back from the dead?
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it does. We're talking about people coming
Why?
back to life after 3 days.
Then
You're doing the
you're
same thing that my previous debate opponent did. And you're trying to take things, stories of other things that are of zero
but,
consequence.
but
All right. Did Muhammad ride a unicorn up into the heavens?
I don't know. We would have to look at the evidence.
There is none. Therefore, we can just
Okay.
say probably didn't happen.
Yeah,
As
but
far as we can tell, people don't ride unicorns up to the heavens. Even little Mjolnir Baron, actually on the screen is over here. Mjolnir Baron Cirrus would agree with me on that.
okay. But what I'm trying to say is that you're telling me that because we've never seen someone rose from the dead, then it's not probable.
It's
Therefore, we would have to dismiss that Hannibal rode on an elephant through a mountain.
dude, that is like saying Corgi plus Cloud equals Star Wars. While that would be an amazing movie, that is non sequitur as shit.
Okay, so what? So
What I'm
okay,
saying is that when we look at the fact that we don't have any evidence of anybody ever rising from the dead,
okay. So
you
what
went
you're
off into elephants through mountains and shit.
yeah. So what you're trying to say is that it because it's a supernatural event, therefore it's different than someone riding on an elephant through a mountain that we have no we have no experience someone doing that. So is that your argument that it's because it's supernatural?
Because it is supernatural, it is by definition the least likely. Period.
Yeah, but if you're telling me,
No, end of story. There is no other. That is it. Because it is a supernatural claim, it is by definition the least likely.
yeah, but if we would have to,
Thank you, Matt Dillahunty, for that, by the way.
yeah, but if we would have to apply that to, for example, so to some event that never happened before, just once in history, then we would have to reject that. I mean, that is
No, I've never said you are making me do things that I never do in debates, and honestly, I kind of blame myself for it. But um, let me do this again. A person rising from the dead. We have never witnessed it before. Because we've never witnessed it before, a body missing means that saying it rose from the dead is the least likely outcome. Do you see what I'm saying?
okay. So is it least probable that a man riding on an elephant?
I am not going to follow that. No, I'm going to stick. If it's okay, I'd like to stick with the whole man who walked around and supposedly performed miracles rose from the dead 3 days after dying on a cross. I'd like to stick to that one.
Yeah, but it's always, I mean, the problem is that like you need to have the same criterion as you have with the resurrection as any
Ex-
other.
Except I don't, because Jesus claimed to be God.
Okay, like that is
Well,
not
actually, Jesus never actually claimed to be God. That's an important thing to say as
that
well.
is not how we do history. I mean,
I don't know that you have ever actually done history before.
we use the same criterion as any other history events or whatever. Like, why would we need to use special criterion on the resurrection? I mean, that is special plating.
Uh, oh, okay, okay, okay. Oh, I'm. I'm.
I am neutral. I can say nothing. I am moderator today.
Yeah, your little plush little Cirrus thing. That was cute. How many? Look, maybe maybe somebody rode a freaking elephant through a mountain. Okay, I don't know. I don't have evidence for it. I don't know if it happened or not. I'm not talking about elephants and mountains and flying saucers and shit like that. Okay. Um, what I am talking about is a person resurrecting from the dead 3 days later, and that is a really cool piece of fan art. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. And I'm doing my best, everybody in the chat. Thank you so much. For I'm taking my deep breaths as I can. Because there is no evidence that's ever happened that a person never resurrected from the dead, why should I even consider that a supernatural event has happened?
Because that hypothesis is the best explanation.
On what planet is this has never happened before, therefore it's the best explanation? What planet or what plane of logic does that exist?
It's the best explanation because the hypothesis is less ad hoc, it has explanatory power and explanatory scope. I mean, that's
Okay. Let me just go with this. Passover, right? I'm even, hey, for the sake of this part of this particular conversation, and at no point before this and no point after this am I going to grant something. This is important, so don't take me out of context either. I'm going to say that Joseph of Arimathea was a real person. Okay. I don't actually believe that, but I'm going to accept that. The Passover, people could do Passover work on the at night, right? Much like in the Ramadan, right? Correct. You agree with that, right?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. I'm just going to go through this with you, and we'll see because so far we're at yeses, and I love yeses. Yeses are my favorite thing ever. Always need to make sure that you always get yes consent, no matter what, and that consent can always be removed, and you have to respect that. Okay.
Mm.
Okay, cool. I'm glad that you accept that. It's an important thing, just like in life in general. Here we go. Joseph of Arimathea put Christ in a tomb, okay, according to the Bible.
Yeah.
Do people sometimes move bodies overnight?
Do people move bodies overnight?
Sometimes. Has it ever happened?
I don't know. Like,
I can tell you that yes, grave robbers are a thing.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Is it possible then that Joseph of Arimathea, call it Saturday night, after the Passover, at night, when it was no longer the Sabbath, was able to go and take the body of Jesus and prepare him to go to his home where his tomb was in Galilee?
Mm-hmm.
Is that possible?
That he did what?
Okay. Getting past the fact that only the book of Matthew, I think, says that the tomb was Joseph of Arimathea's. Joseph of Arimathea would take the body of Jesus and put it in the tomb. right?
Mm?
And if they put it in the tomb, that means that he also knows where it is, and he would be able then on a Saturday night to take it from an unused tomb to put it into the proper Jewish burial place, which would be the burial site or the tomb or the sepulcher, whichever, of his family, which would be something that the Jews would have done because it was respectful during that time up in Galilee. Is it possible that Joseph of Arimathea could have taken the body of Jesus overnight
For what reason?
to prepare it to be, or to move it by himself to Galilee?
I don't. Why would he do that?
Because the Jewish custom said to bury, or especially around the Passover, the Jewish custom was to bury those in their home as respect.
Yeah, but I mean, if that's the case, then
But
it's
is
better
it possible that it happened?
if that happened, then the
No,
real.
all I'm asking you is if it's possible.
I mean, no, I don't think so.
So it's not possible that somebody went and took that, even though we know that
No,
grave robbers happen, and
it's
even though we
possible.
know, okay, so it's possible. So we know these things happen.
It's possible, but
Okay,
it's
then. So
probable.
then hold. So then is it more probable then, because we know it's possible for somebody to take a body overnight, is it more probable that somebody took his body, even if it's Joseph of Arimathea or otherwise, overnight, or that Jesus rose from the dead supernaturally?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know what reason why Joseph Arimathea would have taken his body.
You're making my girlfriend laugh at my reactions, and I'm actually kind of happy because I know that means later on we're gonna have sex for sure. But stop it. If I don't care about justification, okay, I don't care about justification. I care about how is it. How can you? This is again. This is that cognitive dissonance thing. Okay. The cognitive dissonance. You're up against this. You're like, yes, yes, yes. This happens, and now you're at the wall, and you can't break through it. Try it again. People steal bodies. People move bodies. Right? Yes, that happens. Yes?
I guess so.
Not I guess so. You know it's a yes.
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay. Yeah. I guess so is a yes then. Cool.
I will say this: we are approaching the hour mark, which is when Epichrist said they wanted to hop off, and we do have 2 super chat questions to get to.
We can continue on.
Okay.
Yeah,
I just wanted to verify.
Okay, thank you, sir.
We'll continue on for say 20 more minutes, and then we'll do the super chat questions. Is that okay with both of you?
Long as I don't have an aneurysm first.
Nathaniel, are you assuming that?
I'm not.
No, are you assuming that some people stole his body? You know.
No. In fact, I specifically said earlier that I am granting something just as a hypothetical for that part of the conversation, and not to take me out of context, and not to do the bullshit you're doing right now.
But you were assuming that someone stole the body. That's your argument.
That's not my argument.
You said that you told me if it was possible if someone could steal the body.
Yeah, it's possible that because bodies get stolen. And so I just put a name to it.
Yeah, and I was asking you if that was your argument.
No, my argument is that Jesus died and was most likely thrown into a mass grave like the rest of the people. There you go. There's my argument. All I'm saying is that people steal bodies and people move bodies at night. The Indianapolis Colts were in Baltimore. They moved the entire team from Baltimore to Indianapolis overnight without telling anybody. Don't tell me that Joseph of Arimathea couldn't have moved this dude's body.
But why? I mean, he's Sanhedrin. Like, why would he?
That's
Why would?
actually a really good question. And that actually is an incredible literary device. And it's amazing how this is just fits together perfectly. Like, why would a member of the Sanhedrin who respect Jewish law so much and actually would have been required to vote for the death of Jesus go and talk, and it, depending on which gospel you read, thanks again, Bart Ehrman, for that, go and request the body of Jesus because he's secretly a Jesus follower? Like, you, that doesn't make any sense. It just happens to work out. It's like in Avengers where everything just happens to work out, you know? Mind the plot holes.
Okay. I mean, in fact, I mean, Mark Lecona even says that
Yeah, I
it's
don't care about
actually
Mike Lacona.
it's actually embarrassing for the authors to even mention the Sanhedrin. So I mean,
It's not actually embarrassing. And I
why?
hate that criterion of embarrassment because it's not even a real thing. It's not embarrassing at all. It's like the thing with the it's the thing with doubting Thomas or whatever, right? It's not embarrassing. They use it as a literary device to show that people secretly can believe and will be rewarded for it later. It,
Um, are there any scholarly works on that literary usage?
yeah, me. It
Okay.
I don't accept it because it's obvious what it does. These are the people who, I mean, this is okay, fine. Can I, fine. Gamora in the Guardians of the Galaxy, right? Thanos is just certain that she is on his side, right? Or even Nebula, right? Just certain of this shit. But as it turns out, she Joseph Arimathea's his ass. Straight up and down. Literary device complete. Thanks, Russo brothers.
The problem is that you're assuming that the
I couldn't even get a
genre,
smile out of Cirrus for that one. Hurt my feelings.
the
I'm dead
problem,
inside.
Nathaniel, the problem is that you're assuming that the genre of the Gospels are fictional.
I well, no, I just think the Gospels are fictional.
Yeah, exactly. You're assuming that the genre of the Synoptic Gospels are fictional, but that's not really the case. I mean, they're Greco-Roman biographies.
Yeah, they're not. But did
Yes,
you
they
guys see
are.
the scientist Mel is here? I am humbled. About I have followed you since before scientist Mel. I'm so sorry. Sorry, I got distracted.
They are Greco-Roman biographies. Even Bart Ehrman says that. So, I mean,
Yeah, I don't agree. I don't agree with it at all. I don't think they're biographies at all. I think that they are that one of them, by the way, that only there's only like one source, and like that Mark is the only source that we get for the Synoptic Gospels. That my favorite book in the New Testament is the Book of John, which is a legendary retelling of the Book of Mark. And it's like I said, it's like super Jesus.
there
He's my
are
favorite of all the Jesuses. And
there are no
that all comes from Paul in Thessalonians and in Corinth and in it wasn't Philemon, but that all comes from Paul. It's I don't
there,
accept anything that they're biography. Are you serious? It lines up way too closely to be biography.
there are no evidence that John took his that one of his sources is from Mark.
Well, John is its own book.
Yeah, exactly. He is an independent source.
Yeah, there are really kind of two sources. And
Yeah,
realistically, depending on how one actually accepts the supposed gospel of Q, um, right? One could say that that there's really only one source for all of it, and that they all just embellished, especially the Book of John. And one could say that. But what about? Yeah, and by the way, I don't actually accept the Gospel of Q, but I'm just saying that it is a hypothesis. But what about Simon of Perea? Are you there?
yeah. What?
Simon of Perea.
Yeah,
What is your opinion of Simon of Perea?
I don't know.
But well,
What's your point?
Simon of you don't do you not know the story of Simon of Perea?
Yeah, but
Well, tell me what
what's
you.
your point?
Well, I'm gonna make a point, but tell me what you um uh what you what you think of the story of Simon of Perea.
Simon of the Perea. Okay, but could you please tell me your argument or your point?
Well, no, tell me, do you know the story of Simon of Perea?
Yeah, I know he was a slave, right?
Depending on which of the Maccabees you read, but go ahead.
And I guess I don't entirely remember, but I think Josephus spoke about him being a Messiah, if that is correct.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Go on. What else you got?
I don't really remember entirely. It was a while I read Josephus, but what I know is that he was some Messiah figure.
Okay. Can I give a quick synopsis then?
Yeah, sure.
Sure. I'm gonna read it from this book right here. That way, I'm not taking it out of context. This is actually from the book Paul and Jesus by James Tabor, who is a well-respected historical scholar of of Hebrew and of Jewish literature. So it's important to note
Okay.
that. Did you just yawn?
No, I
Um,
didn't. I'm
okay.
sorry. I'm sorry if I didn't do that on purpose. Just saying.
It's okay. I was joking anyways. This by the way comes from the Dead Sea Scrolls, which is where the story comes from. Okay. This is on a tablet that was discovered. It's actually the Gabriel Revelation tablet, and this actually comes from this, so it's important to know this. Um, let's see here. It's the final section on this tablet focuses on the death and resurrection of a messianic leader, most likely Simon of Perea, which is who it was. Led a revolt in Judea in 4 BCE following the death of Herod the Great. Josephus reports that Simon's followers crowned him, a tall and handsome figure, as king of the Jews. He ravaged the countryside for a time, burning down the royal palace at Jericho. Gratus, Herod's military commander, pursued Simon and caught up with him in Transjordan and beheaded him, much like John the Baptist. What is fascinating and new about this text is that the slain leader who has, according to the text, become, quote, dung of the rocky crevices, his body decayed in the desert heat, is nonetheless addressed by the angel Gabriel, I command you, Prince of Princes, in 3 days you shall live. What does that sound like?
Yeah. Okay.
What does it sound like?
That I guess he rose from the dead within 3 days.
Within 3 days. What else does it sound like? Like who exactly does it sound like? Like just a
You
name.
are trying to assume that.
I'm not assuming anything. I'm doing a line of questioning.
Yeah, you are trying to tell me that it's similar to resurrection, I guess.
Hold on, wait, but no, I was like a specific name.
Specific name? What?
It's Jesus. What specific name? It's Jesus.
Okay.
Do you see the parallels?
Okay.
I'm guessing ESK is yes. Okay. So if you see the parallels, which one of those was written first?
I guess the one you mentioned.
God, that is correct. Yes. Especially because it was written around the time of 4 BCE, right?
Okay.
Okay. So if it talks about Herod the Great around 4 BCE, in the book of Matthew, when was Jesus born?
I don't know, 4 BC or 3 BC. I don't know. It depends.
Well, no, that's actually exactly, by the way, what the book of Matthew says about when Jesus was born.
Mm.
Was what happened in whenever Jesus was born around 4 BCE?
It was, if I remember right, um, in Matthew, they fled to Egypt because of Herod.
Because of Herod the Great and because he was slaughtering people, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And that was, by the way, that was the murdering of the witnesses and all that. The I'm sorry, not the witnesses, but the innocents, right? The death of the
Yeah.
witnesses. Okay. There's parallels between the book of Matthew, right, and the and this book from this tablet from the Dead Sea Scrolls. And it
Yeah.
even goes into the fact to where you're talking about the exact same time frame, and then a prince of princes or a king of kings coming in and doing all of these things. So which is more likely, that Gabriel came down after this person was beheaded and said, "You're going to rise in 3 days," or that it never actually happened?
We would have to look at evidence.
Is it more likely that an angel came down and told somebody who had been dead for 3 days, lying in the desert, to rise from the dead? Sorry, probable. I don't use the word likely. I apologize for, don't want to do that. But more probable that this happened. Which is more probable?
I would say improbable because we have no enough evidence to
You have a,
conclude that it happened.
okay. So now, is it more probable, exact same question, for Yeshua ben Joseph?
Yes, because we have evidence that concludes he
What
did.
evidence do we have?
I these 5 so-called facts.
I like that you say so-called facts. That makes me smile inside and outside.
Yeah,
Um,
okay.
okay, and you're aware that that 3 of them are, people say I saw something, but in fact, only one of them actually said I saw something, or I had a an experience, right?
Well, I mean, Paul says that 500 people
Now, Paul is
saw.
repeating something that somebody told him in the Apostles' Creed. You can tell that's easy to see. Come on, come on, come on, come on.
Yeah, he even says that many of them even lived in his
Yeah,
time.
I know what he said. I asked you a very specific question. I know what Paul wrote in that. That's the Apostles' Creed, which is something that he had memorized that he was writing. But what I asked you, and you already agreed to this earlier, is that
Memorize.
he memorized the Apostles' Creed, the same thing that you could do today in 1 Corinthians chapter 15 from verse 1 to 50. It's the same concept. I could do it too. Um, the there's only one person in the Bible who said, "I saw or had an experience with the risen Jesus." One.
Okay. Then we have 500 witness.
No, we don't. We have a person who said 500 people saw him. We
A
don't
creed.
have 500.
We have a creed that dates back to 37 AD or something. I don't remember when.
Yeah, we have somebody saying that somebody told them that 500 people saw something.
Yeah, creed.
Congratulations. This is third hand at best.
A creed. An early creed.
Yeah, that somebody said that somebody told them something after somebody said that they saw something.
These 500 witness.
Who we do not have any, right? We don't have any outside of, we have nothing. Period.
So what? It's a creed that contains 500 witness. So I mean,
I mean, what are their names? Where are they from? How many kids do they have?
I don't know, but he actually mentioned few of them.
He mentioned the names of the 500.
Yeah, Peter, James.
No, no, Peter, Cephas, and James, the supposed brother of Jesus, are not among the 500, and you know that. Don't try and do that to me. I feel like I have shown in this conversation and in others with you that I know this text fairly well. Don't try and tell me that Cephas and James, the supposed brother of Jesus, should be considered among these 500, among some who are still alive today. No, 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 no.
Okay,
I need the names of the 500. Come on.
let me ask you a question. Why would it, why would he like it create something that early? Like why would he like make like why would he invent such like why would he even say that 500 like saw it? Like that doesn't make any sense.
Well, he believed that he had an experience.
Yeah, but we're talking about the 500 eyewitness.
Yeah, which we only see from Paul, right?
Which is an early creed.
Yeah, but hold on. You asked me why would he create? He believed he had an experience. Now he has confirmation bias.
No, I did not say why did Paul. I said why would those who made up this creed back in 47 AD, why would they invent that 500 people saw Jesus?
The same reason Donald Trump tries to say that there are thousands and thousands of people at his rallies to give himself legitimacy. We know it's a lie, but he still says it anyways.
I don't know about that.
I do. I know it very specifically. The mofo says that there's thousands more people at his rallies than there actually are. It's a lie, and he tries to give himself legitimacy. It's the same concept. People do that.
Yeah, but think about it.
I mean, I just gave you one reason. I happen to bring up the most deplorable person I could currently think of.
Yeah, but
And I can't trump that.
You made me high voice laugh. How dare you?
Yeah, but think about it. Like, why?
We have 3 minutes left, Bo. Just so you know, before we get into Q&A.
I have so much more.
Yeah, but why would they make up something?
I just told you. I gave you one reason. Why would they make it up?
Okay, but why wouldn't the Pharisees say that they made up?
Oh, well, if you read the book of Matthew, it actually says that they made up a story about stealing the body. It wouldn't have been the Pharisees anyway. It would have been the Sadducees.
No, we're talking about the resurrection, not the empty tomb.
Yeah, I know, but well, wait. Are those not one and the same thing?
Yeah, it is, but we're talking specifically about the resurrection.
Okay.
So why? So if that's the case, why wouldn't the Pharisees have an argument against the Christians?
Nobody's saying that they didn't, by the way. They may have. I don't know. They may have.
Yeah, but I mean, because
well, it's actually, if I read Pliny the Older, Pliny the Younger, Tacitus, Josephus, and many other people around that time, I could even read into very much into 3rd century types of things. This was never seen as more than a cult by the early Jews and other Gentiles. So that
cult.
Yes.
I would
Josephus very specifically, yeah.
Okay, even if it's the cult, I mean, I don't care. I care what the evidence leads to. So
yeah, which apparently you think the evidence leads, even though we have no examples of anybody ever rising from the dead, to somebody rising from the dead. Even though we don't have any examples, we don't actually know where an empty tomb would even be, that an empty tomb even exists. You say that there's an empty tomb.
Why would we need to know where the empty tomb is?
It would give you... Hold on, I'm whispering. It would give you credibility.
No, that is kind of irrelevant. It
would be evidence, man.
No, what is probably irrelevant is the fact that we are at the end point.
Yeah,
we are at that point. I did say we had 3 minutes left, and we are there. So
I caught that, sir. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So that does mean that we need to get into the super chats, because we have questions for that. So give me just a moment. My hands are tiny now. Hold on. There we go. Okay, so the first super chat question, and this one is to you, Epichrist. This one is from Brian Stevens, and it is, are these the arguments that convinced you?
Well, I mean, for the sake of the argument, I have actually more arguments than the 5 facts, but the reason why I didn't bring them up is because I wanted this debate to be more simplistic form, if you know what I mean.
So the answer is no.
Well,
the question was not, could you bring more facts to bear? The
Well,
question was
I
very
would say
simply,
yes.
hold on. The question from Brian Stevens was, are these the arguments that convinced you?
Yes.
So these are, in fact, the argument that the Gary Habermas's minimal facts are the arguments that convinced you to become a Christian.
I guess so. Yes.
There's not a guess here.
Yes.
Okay. The next question is also from Brian Stevens, and it is also addressed to Epichrist as well. This one is, how do you know the Bible is true?
How I know the Bible is true? Well, I'm not, a priest up, so how I know the Bible is true is through textual criticism and the reliability of the Gospels. That's it.
We could debate that for hours. I'm just saying.
That could be another. Yeah, that's an
Yeah.
entire other can of worms. Okay. So there is another. There's actually a few more. This one. All right. The next one is from Quessa, and this one is, it's not uncommon to see fanatics hiding the death of a charismatic leader. Is this motive not more obvious and likely? That was to Epichrist.
I didn't hear. Could you rephrase?
Sure, that's fine. It's not uncommon to see fanatics hiding the death of a charismatic leader. Is this motive not more obvious and likely? I imagine not more obvious and likely than the resurrection.
I don't know. I don't know.
Don't worry, he wouldn't answer that whenever I asked him either. So it's not.
The next question we have is from Zach FR, and this one is, I'm sorry, Nathaniel, it's also for Epichrist. Can you not accept Occam's razor?
I accept Occam Razor.
We'll leave that as it is. That is, as far as the questions in Superchats, that is all we've got for the questions. There were a few other Superchats past that. Scientist Mel said that she likes table flipping Jesus, and that is the Jesus that we need right now. Also, she says that Rise of the Table Flipping Jesus DC Comics, not terribly referential to the conversation at hand, and not a question aimed at either of the debaters, but there it is for anybody who wants lulz.
I agree, by the way. And that's why he's in my favorite book. Table flipping Jesus and bitch slapping Jesus is my favorite Jesus. So Mel, you and I agree on so much, and here's more of it. Thank you.
Okay, Scientist Mel actually did bring another question. And this one seems like it has nobody that it's actually referenced to, so this one can be for either. So we'll have Nathaniel answer first, and then Epichrist afterwards. If Jesus was resurrected, why did it take... Oh, God, there's the
Jesus
robot
was
voice.
resurrected, why did it take 3 days? You'd think it'd be a lot faster. Quantum playing a role could suggest a reanimation based on quantum entanglement. Why wouldn't God use that?
Okay, there we go. It said, if Jesus was resurrected, why did it take 3 days? You'd think that it would be a lot faster. Quantum playing a role could suggest a reanimation based on quantum entanglement. Why wouldn't God use that?
God had not yet met Hank Pym.
Okay, Epichrist.
Actually, I think it was Mike Licona, but Mike Licona in his newest book, Why Are There Differences? He argues that 3 days are actually like time compression. In other words, I think what he's arguing is that he was dead maybe more than a week, I guess. I think maybe time compression. I don't know.
Well, and if I may on that one as well, there is usually inside the text, the 3-day thing is not really to be taken incredibly literally. I'm not on Epichrist's side on this, but I'm just saying that there are ways to kind of parse that into saying that it's not a literal 3 days. I'm not saying on Mike Lacona's side. I'm not saying that I accept this literary device of time compression and stuff like that. But there are arguments to be made for the literal or metaphorical 3 days. It has to do with the Passover and Sabbath and whatnot. So
We do have another question, this one from Susan Turpin. Isn't God just a big old toddler? We'll start with Epichrist and then go to Nathaniel because it has nobody that it's sent to.
That's actually a great question. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe when Jesus was a baby, I don't know.
Nathaniel, you do it.
I was thinking of this earlier. How do Susan and I have all the same thoughts? My question earlier was if death and aging entered the world through sin and Jesus was sinless, how did Jesus age? That was the question I had earlier. And also, does that mean that I'm only going to live to be 33? Because fuck, oh man, I just cussed on your channel. I'm so because I already passed that. I'm so sorry, sir.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Don't worry.
I think that I wouldn't say toddler. And Susan is welcome to she's in the other room, by the way. She's welcome to come in here so you guys can see her beautiful face. But I would say that the monotheistic, if you will, it certainly is polytheistic, but the monotheistic creation of this patriarchal society is what we would expect him to be. And that is somebody who gives all the power to a certain select few groups of people, of men, and then labels everything else, especially women and children, young girls especially, as property. This is what we would expect from this particular creation.
Okay, and with, you'd think that being made of knitted wool wouldn't mean that you still have phlegm in your throat, but apparently I can't avoid that. So, are you trying to do things?
I would just, they can hear you if you want to say hi, Susan.
Hi. I don't have the headphones on, so I can't tell what anybody's saying.
They're saying you're beautiful, and
You're so Polish.
There's
Sorry, I'm sorry.
That said, I guess the only thing we can really do now is do closing statements as best we can. If you guys can just do them at like 2 minutes. I know this has been informal, so closing statements are kind of weird to do, but we'll go ahead and do that and then end on that note. Yeah? Yeah. We'll start with... We started out the debate with Epichrist starting, so we will start out our closing statements with Nathaniel. For fun.
I do like fun. Thank you so much, Cyrus. First off, again, thank you so much for allowing myself and Epichrist to be on here and to have this conversation. I did enjoy it. After going back and looking at everything and thinking of everything we went over, which is certainly not everything that could be involved in this conversation, this is an incredibly broad topic. I don't think that Epichrist made a very good case. I don't believe that he answered the questions intellectually honestly. I don't believe that he followed his own personally held epistemological positions very well. I felt like my questions were honest. I felt like my understanding showed that while it is certainly possible that something could happen, the probability of it is, as we know now, certainly less likely than a person staying dead. And I believe that I showed, and everybody I think that could listen to this and be impartial as much as possible can show that as far as we can tell right now, that nobody should be moved toward the idea that Jesus rose from the dead, whether it be 3 days or a week later.
Okay, and then Epichrist, would you like to go ahead and voice your closing statements before we close out?
Sure. I believe that the hypothesis of the resurrection is the best explanation because it has the best explanatory power and best explanatory scope, and it is less ad hoc. As we today discussed, we talked about whether Paul thought Jesus rose spiritual or not, and I mean it is kind of, I mean it's not really debatable whether he rose spiritual. I mean, it is kind of a fact that he rose bodily, but nevertheless, we discussed whether they saw Jesus Christ. I mean, it is reasonable that they did indeed saw Jesus Christ, and I don't think it's very reasonable to say that they could somehow lied about the creed when, I mean, they died for their belief, whatever. Yeah, I mean, that's my closing.
We never got into that whole dying for the belief thing.
Yeah,
I hope we do at some point because they're.
and I want to thank Suris for letting us have this debate, and yeah.
Even if it's been plush service for the last half hour? Something like that. Oh, well.
Yeah, it sounds about right. And obviously, Susan's right there behind me as I'm pointing at her. She's my co-host on Divine Disbelief. Hi. And should come on our listen to us Sunday night, 7:30 Central Time. So like 2 days from right now.
I have links to that in the description, by the way, for anybody who wants to go subscribe.
Thanks, buddy.
That all said, I do hope that you guys enjoyed watching the debate. I know that it was a bit unconventional, but if you guys enjoyed it, then hopefully you guys will subscribe. If not, then that's okay. I hate myself as much as you probably hate me. That all said, I will see you all on Monday.